Right, so it is day 106 of my foolish decision to decide I was going to plant a tree every day for 2023. So let's get on with it. So in my litany of bad decisions that this entire process so far has been, I have had several fairly constant companions, if I'm honest, but one particular one I want to make note of today, and that is Dracaena fragrans. So I have planted this as a companion plant 99 times, sometimes multiply in the same planting, so sometimes some of those 99 times all happened within the same video, but I thought it was about time it got planted as a tree in its own right for its 100th planting. So that is our tree today. So Dracaena fragrans is a fairly popular houseplant around the world. It is often sold with different variants, sometimes called a corn plant, sometimes just called a dragon plant. There are a whole load of different names for it and a whole load of different varieties. It is actually native in Zambia, although further north in Zambia than we are. It does sometimes make me wonder if the original we have is from a cutting my grandmother took from somewhere in Zambia, or whether it's from a domesticated plant that has been taken out of Zambia and brought back in, which is probably the case with the Mesangiana variant that we have here as well. Because I can't just make one bad decision at once, I also thought I would do something to honour the wishes of a friend of mine who was always encouraging to make this particular bad decision. So he was a big fan of planting things in groups of related plants, so you can see all the variations, and it does look very nice, but it's a massive, massive risk for disease. And so I am putting all of these plants at risk. Probably not the Dracaena fragrans, because they're very, very hardy, and again, even if its roots get chewed off like the Dracaena studinaria that happened to a little while ago, I can just chop off the damaged part and replant it in a pot and then plant it back out. So this tree will be making it to the end because it is dedicated to someone, so even if something happens to it, we will be fixing that problem. But I will be planting all its companion plants from the genus Dracaena. So that does include the Sansevieras, which are, without them, Dracaena is somewhat paraphyletic. I will probably be referring to them as Sanseviera because old habits die hard, and they do take slightly different care. But, so Pete, this is for you. I am planting Dracaena reflexa as one of the marker plants. It's much, much smaller than the Dracaena fragrans, and it should be quite happy here because we're in the shade of the Bambusa. We shouldn't be getting afternoon sun, so it shouldn't suffer sunburn like a lot of the ones that have been planted out where they're sort of intended to be temporary have. We're also going to be putting in, just to make it to 100 Dracaena fragrans planted as companion plants, we're going to be putting a Dracaena fragrans variant compacta, which is one I haven't planted out yet. I have propagated this from cutting, and I've got another one in a pot in case the mole rats eat this one, but it's rooted nicely, so I thought it's time to try risking it out in the soil. And then we're going to go with 4 different species that are usually put in Sansevieria, but we're not just stopping at that. So we're putting in the 2 native Dracaena pearsoni and Dracaena downsy. Then I'm putting in the East African Dracaena parva, which is sometimes called the African hyacinth, which is a lovely little Sansevieria type, which has a lilac-y purple flower, and it's really lovely when it comes up, and it comes up quite a lot more readily than a lot of the other Sansevieria flowers do. And then we're putting in, I think, all but one of the variants of Dracaena trifasciata I have. I don't know the names of all of these, but basically we've got one with a variegation down the side. We've got a truly dwarfing miniature one, which is standard colouring, but only comes up about 3 inches. That will take quite a lot of care to make sure it doesn't get, lost in the undergrowth. We are putting in the standard plain green banded type, although it's a relatively small one because this one is actually a reversion from another type we're putting in, which is the moonshine type, which is a relatively dwarfing pale green, bluish grey type, which I do find is pretty hardy here and rarely reverts, so even when the mole rats come through here inevitably and do chew on the bases of these a little bit, the moonshine should spring back as itself, even if the variegated one will probably spring back as the plain wild type. I will probably come along and put in a couple of other species of Sansevieria that I do have growing around the place when I have enough to know that if I put them in this risky situation, I won't lose them entirely. Right, thank you very much for watching. That should be all of it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't enjoy it, thank you very much for making it this far in the video. I will be planting another tree tomorrow. If you want to tune into that, it will hopefully be slightly less foolish, but we will see.